You guys asked for it, so you shall receive it. To celebrate Spooktober, I'm gonna be beating Baldur's Gate 3 as Simon Belmont. The general consensus from the last video was that you guys care more about me properly building and roleplaying the character for the video than the difficulty of the challenge. So for this video, I'll still be playing on Honor Mode, but I'll also be bringing companions with me, and I'll have a couple of mods active as well, since there are mods on consoles now, partly to make things easier so that I can build Simon and roleplay him without worrying about it causing me to fail the challenge, and partly because I can't be bothered to keep turning my mods off and on again when I want to play for the video and on my personal time. Contrary to my first video, I'll be breaking this challenge up into 3 videos, one for each act. I've decided to make this change so that I can show you guys more of what happens in each individual act, rather than throwing away or offhandedly mentioning several dozen hours worth of events in the playthrough, so that I can get more videos to you guys faster, and so that you guys can leave comments on the videos to give me advice or leave suggestions or help me to decide on certain things. Being that I find the Smash Bros. Games usually represent all the main powers and abilities of their roster members as accurately and succinctly as possible, I'll be using Simon's Smash Bros. Rendition as a guideline to building my character, as well as D&D Builds' Build a Belmont video, since I think he did a really good job of capturing the general powers and abilities of the Belmonts too. So I'll be starting as a human, since Simon is, of course, a human, and it also gives him a bunch of equipment proficiencies, which are important for the build, since Simon fights exclusively relying on his physical abilities, his vampire killer, and his sub-weapons. And we're gonna start as a ranger, since not only is that what D&D Builds did, but more specifically, the Belmonts are a clan of monster hunters, so the ranger matches them the best. For favorite enemy, I of course went with Sanctified Stalker, since that's the option dedicated to killing the undead, and it gets me proficiency in religion, something I definitely need as a Christian vampire slaying clan member, and I took Urban Tracker for Natural Explorer, since Simon doesn't have beasts he can summon, and since Castlevania's a castle, I think that matches an urban environment more so than a desert or a swamp or whatever. I went with the folk hero background since Simon's main goal was to defeat Dracula and repair the reputation of the Belmont clan, and after doing so the first time, he became one of the most well-known and legendary monster hunters ever. I made my ability score match the ones that D&D Builds went for in his guide, which was a fantastic stat set for reasons I'll explain later. I took proficiency in athletics for Simon's insane physicality, perception because that's one of the most important skills, and Simon would need it to suss out potential threats hiding in the shadows, and insight and investigation to be able to track down vampires and spot them if they try to blend into a crowd of humans. After 20 minutes of trying to make my Tav look as much like Simon Belmont from Grimoire of Souls and Smash as possible, and doing a pretty damn good job, I think, and then proceeding to spend another 10 minutes trying to make my Guardian look like the mysterious gypsy woman from Castlevania 2, I begin my journey to hunt down the monsters plaguing this land and once again prove the name of the Belmont clan. After looting as much stuff as I could find, I freed us to take advantage of its wanting to help me, but didn't risk losing its trust by trying to mutilate it. I teamed up with Lae'zel, rescued Shadowheart, and picked up all the throwables and explosives at the helm before landing the ship in Belmont fashion. When I wake up, I get to 2nd level, where I put a level into Fighter since I want to get at least 3 levels of Fighter for the Battlemaster subclass to get the Trip Attack maneuver so that I can replicate Simon's Up B, his uppercut, by targeting a creature for a Trip Attack and then jumping with my bonus action. For our fighting style, we're going with Duelist as D&D Build suggested since the throwing fighting style from 5e isn't available, so we can't strengthen our sub-weapons, so we might as well strengthen our future Vampire Killer, which is a one-handed weapon. I wake up Shadowheart, and we go ahead and fight these Intellect Devourers. Now, there are no whips in Baldur's Gate 3 unfortunately, but Vampire Killer in Smash Bros is more of a flail anyway, which is perfect since flails are very much available in Baldur's Gate 3, but since we don't have access to one yet, I'll have to just fight these brain boys with what I have on hand. Luckily, I was able to find some hand axes on the Nautiloid that I can use to replicate Simon's Neutral Beat, his axe sub-weapon from Castlevania. Because of my high strength, they actually do some pretty great damage, and Shadowheart and I are able to finish off the Intellect Devourers. Then I recruit Astarion, kill the injured Mind Flayer, and recruit Gale, but since Astarion is a vampire, even if Simon doesn't know that yet, I don't think I want one on my team. Before replacing Astarion, I go ahead and equip Halsin's campwear that I got from a mod since it looks much closer to Simon's leather and fur sleeveless armor than what I'm currently wearing does, and then I set back out. To replace Astarion, I recruit Lae'zel instead so that I can have a good healer and good source of radiant damage in Shadowheart. a good spellcaster and backline DPS in Gale, and a good frontline DPS in Lae'zel, who can also equip all the heavy armor and martial weapons I get along the run. Before adding her to the team though, I decided to take advantage of Astarion's powerful sneak attacks to take out the Gobbos in front of the Grove. Astarion easily drops goblins from stealth, Gale magic missiles any near dead ones from afar, Shadowheart was out of spell slots at the time, so I had her just spam Firebolt and Sacred Flames, and Simon of course spent the whole fight thrashing on goblins with sheer raw power. We lost Eredin, but the rest of the adventurers and the tieflings were able to help us to defeat the remaining enemies with few losses. This was actually enough to get us to level 3. One of the mods I downloaded to help make Honor Mode a little less difficult so that I could actually roleplay and build the character of the video was a mod that adds levels 13 to 20 to the game like 5th edition D&D, and a second mod that doubles all XP you gain so that you could reasonably reach 20th level without having to scrounge up every single possible little piece of XP you could conceivably get your hands on, so that means that I will be leveling up much faster throughout the run. Let me know if you guys like this idea in the comments down below, but for now, I take a second level of Ranger and get an ASI from a mod I downloaded that grants you an Origin feat at second level to represent the Origin feat rule from the new 2024 D&D rules. Despite having Belnada's blood, Simon isn't much of a spellcaster, rather just being built different much like another vampire killer I love. So for his Ranger spells, I only go with things that could be explained as him having superhuman physical power, or that could be used to replicate abilities he has naturally, like Hunter's Mark to represent his vast knowledge of, extensive training in, and experience hunting monsters, and Longstrider for his superhuman speed, even though he's moving at like a mile a minute in the original Castlevania. For our second fighting style from second level Ranger, I went with Defense since I won't be using archery much since I'll be relying on my sub-weapons for ranged attacks. Simon only wields Vampire Killer, so 2-weapon fighting would be useless. And because I aim to wear Simon's leather armor for the entire run, so it's a free AC boost. D&D builds recommended Slasher for your Origin feat, but since that feat isn't in the game, I instead decided to strengthen my sub-weapons by getting Tavern Brawler to boost the damage of thrown weapons. This is just the start of how my sub-weapons end up becoming ridiculously powerful before even getting to Act 2. I then head into the Grove and recruit Will, only so that I can use an infinite money glitch to buy anything I want whenever I want. Immediately putting this to practice, I buy everything Aaron has, with notable inclusions being the Hedge Wanderer armor, a suit of leather armor that grants a +1 bonus to nature and dex saves and ability checks, the Ring of Flinging, which adds another d4 of damage to my thrown sub-weapons, making them even stronger, and the Dragon's Grasp throwing axe. Now, though it has sleeves, I have fur and leather armor to match what Simon is seen wearing. I knock out a couple things in the Grove, like saving Arabella, getting Kaga's Shadow Druid note for later, meeting up with Nettie, who enlists us to rescue Halsin from the goblins. I finally get Lae'zel on the team. We straight up slaughter that bugbear assassin. I threaten to murder Raphael because he's an evil devil from hell. I nab the silver pendant because enchanted magical items and scrolls are pretty much the only way Simon can ever use any magic. I easily, and actually even stealthily wipe out all the goblins in the secret Druid Grove tunnel. And I help Findal and gather all the explosives in the cave since I have a carry weight mod that allows me to carry like 10,000 pounds so that I don't constantly have to manage what I'm carrying. And I have a mod that lets me stack up to 99 barrels in my inventory, so I plan to use every explosive I can get and nuke Merkel, Gortash, Orin, and the Netherbrain. In any case, with all that done, I decided that it's high time I go pay Edwin, Brina, and Andrix a visit. They claim I'm the chosen one of some false god, so I kindly explain that I'm nothing of the sort, but they react to that information quite negatively and respond with violence. So I use my newly obtained Morning Star, the closest thing I currently have to the vampire killer, and kill these insane evil cultists. After we finish them off, I get a Mind Flayer Tadpole, which will allow me to unlock some good powers later that'll be great for the run. Upon reaching the Blighted Village, I use my threatening barbarian-like visage and demeanor, as well as my reputation as the best monster hunter around to intimidate the goblin ambush to let me through, and to get some experience, and more importantly the warped headband of intellect from Lump to act as my Simon's headband, I pick a fight with the ogres, and though things don't quite go all that well to start, after closing the game to reload my last save, I fought them a second time a little more strategically and was able to defeat all three of them and their goblin backup by having Gale and Shadowheart attack them from above, using my Hunter's Mark and Axe sub-weapon effectively, having Lae'zel back me up at ground level, using my Walmart brand Vampire Killer when necessary, and saving Lump for the end, at which point we all just ganged up on him. Headband acquired. With that done, I did a couple of other side things before moving on to the Goblin Camp, like scaring away Fezurk and his goons to save Barkus, leveled up to 4th level, getting a 2nd level of Fighter and taking an ability score improvement to boost my strength to 18 and my wisdom to 13. I freed Barkus and scared off Gimblebach by letting him know the Nautiloid crash site had monsters in it. I broke into the refectory and fought off all the scavengers in a pretty awesome fight where I trapped one with my party away from his group by closing the door, killed him and opened it back up, and had my 2 frontline DPS party members, Simon and Lae'zel, beat the crap out of the scavs while Shadowheart and Gale took potshots at them from the next room. I defeated all the undead scribes, and I freed Withers, which is important because I can now revive fallen Conrads, but more importantly, I can now hire hirelings. See, I had the idea that, since Richter Belmont is an Echo Fighter for Simon and Smash, and Richter is incredibly popular as well, basically being the Joseph Joestar to Simon's Jonathan, and he's apparently popular enough that Netflix even made an anime about him, even though I've heard that the Netflix Castlevania series is pretty hit or miss with actual Castlevania fans. So I thought it would be cool if I hired a hireling and made him into Richter for Act 2 and 3. If you guys want to see that, let me know in the comments down below, but in any event, it's at this point that I find out that Astarion is a vampire. Now, I considered outright killing him, but I'm glad that I decided against that since I'd like to do his storyline and defeat Cazador, since that's the closest thing to playing Castlevania in Baldur's Gate 3. My rationale here was that, while Lords of Shadow's canonicity is dubious at best, Simon's game does give us our best look at his personality, and in that game, though he nearly kills Alucard because Vampire Killer reacts from being near him, which leads him to believe that Alucard is one of Dracula's allies, once Alucard explains himself, Simon aligns himself with Alucard. Now, Astarion's secret is revealed in a very compromising situation, but considering that he's been our ally up to this point, he helped us with the goblins, and shares our plight of having the Mind Flayer tadpole, I think it's reasonable that Simon would hear him out. After learning that he doesn't drink human blood and just needs blood to have strength to fight, I had Simon forgive him for lying and begrudgingly allow Astarion to drink his blood. Simon's definitely a bit of a brute and a hothead, but he's not a cruel man, even apologizing to Alucard for his brash behavior, so I don't think it's that much of a leap to believe that he'd be willing to help an ally in need here. I still wasn't feeling ready to take on the 3 leaders at the Goblin Camp, so I did a couple more side missions, like helping Alfira, killing the Harpies, which was actually pretty fun this time around since my whole team wasn't constantly falling for the song, and I could actually hit them by throwing my axe sub-weapon, especially with the things doing like 20 damage per throw. I kicked Gale off the team because he started asking for magic items, and replaced him with Astarion for sneak attack power and so that he could be my Alucard. I went to the Owlbear Cave and got the Selûne stuff, as well as the Oakfather's Embrace, a leather armor set that makes it so that undead that hit the wearer take a d6 of radiant damage, perfect for the leather armor wearing undead slayer. I recruited Scratch. I also recruited Karlach after nearly killing her, again similarly to the Arikado situation. I killed all the fake heretical paladins of Tyr for my new ally in a quite tough battle, namely due to Anders' crazy powerful attacks and Cyril pushing Shadowheart off a 10-story building. And then I finally intimidated my way into the Goblin Camp, not really having become any stronger, but feeling more confident after beating Anders. Upon getting to the Goblin Camp, I used the Warlock pack weapon glitch to clean out Grat's inventory, specifically of note, the Returning Pike. To keep on the trend of this basically becoming a throwing build, the Returning Pike will be our side B, our cross sub-weapon. There isn't a crucifix available in the game unfortunately, but of course. So the next best thing I can do is use a weapon that you can throw that then returns to you like the cross does. There are 2 weapons like this in the game, the Returning Pike and the Dwarven Thrower in Act 3, and though they don't hit the creatures when returning like the cross does, this is the next best thing. I got Volo in trouble, beat Crusher and spared him only to kill him a couple seconds later for his ring for the extra movement speed, and then I remembered that I could actually probably take out the Face Spider Matriarch and Auntie Ethel for a level or 2 before going into the Sanctum since I was strong enough at this point. The Returning Pike does a lot of damage when you use it, which is great, but the downside is that when it returns to you, you instantly equip it. That's a great way to equip a weapon for free if you happen to drop it. just throw the returning pike if you drop a different weapon, or throw the returning pike from the ground if you drop the pike itself. But it's not so great if you want to throw your pike and then fight off the enemies that close the distance next round with your vampire killer, because you'd have to waste a turn swapping back to it. For the Matriarch, the fight started awful when I threw the returning pike before combat, but throwing it initiated combat and the pike didn't return, and after a series of unfortunate events, I decided to just reset the encounter. That was a shame because I was pretty close to winning and likely would've barring some bad luck. The second go was much better. I had Astarion start combat, the Phase Spider Matriarch walked on a web, so Shadowheart, who was still stealth, firebolted it out from underneath her and proned her, and after having Lae'zel and Simon attack the Matriarch as well, it was at a third of its maximum health on round 1, even less so after Astarion got his licks in. Surviving the round was tough because of the other phase spiders and the babies the Matriarch summoned on her first turn, but after action surging and doing 12 damage to the Matriarch with a critical miss from Simon's Cross, likely due to the fall damage, and with Lae'zel for some reason just getting a second turn that I used to slaughter a phase spider that phased to us, they were as good as dead. A couple rounds later, and that's just what happened. Don't get me wrong, tough fight, especially due to their action economy advantage after summoning 2 swarms of babies. I mean, Lae'zel even died. But that first round was just too good. On my way out of the spider cave, I found the Sussurbark Forge, did the Alchemist's Cellar stuff, and got the Bracers of Defense, which will be my bracers for the rest of the run, even though I don't think they work on me because I'm wearing armor, but they do look like Simon's bracers. I recovered the Book of Thay, only to forget about it for most of the run, and rescued Auntie Ethel by knocking out Joel and Demir. When she teleported away, and the beautiful area became a nasty, dark, dank, musty bog swamp, I had an inkling of a feeling that she might be an evil hag, so I went after her to rescue Mayrina, the sister Joel and Demir had mentioned Ethel had kidnapped. While I was here, I thought I might as well get that Shadow Druid note from the Kaga thing, so after having Astarion and Shadowheart spiritual weapon solo 1 Woodwode, and having Simon, Lae'zel, and Shadowheart take out all the ancient mud methods, killing any methods they had spawned instantly, and the other Woodwode, I got the note and some loot, and then headed to Ethel's. I also gained another level from the fight, so I put another level into Ranger, got the enhanced leap spell because it can be explained as Simon just having superhuman jumping power. I took the Hunter subclass as it's literally described as a slayer of massive hordes of undead, and took Colossus Slayer because it would help me take down Dracula as mentioned by D&D builds. On the way to Ethel, I stopped to speak to a fellow monster hunter, but after an altercation broke out due to his reasonably hunting Astarion but unreasonably not listening to me trying to de-escalate, we had to fight. He wasn't too powerful, but I definitely didn't want to kill him being that he had his heart in the right place and was a fellow monster hunter, but I accidentally did when I forgot ranged attacks can't be non-lethal, so I had to go all the way back to when I entered the Putrid Bog, kill all the monsters at the tree stump again, take out Gandrel non-lethally this time, and then finally get to Ethel's. I revealed to Mayrina that I knocked out her brothers who had come to rescue her, but that upset Ethel, so she teleported Mayrina away, transformed, and our battle began. As you can imagine, a full team of level 5s can fight a single 5th level hag pretty easily. Lae'zel beat her pretty badly with extra attack, Astarion about nuked her with sneak attack, Simon threw his axe and cross with action surge, and Shadowheart summoned a spirit weapon and guiding bolted Ethel. By the end of round 1, much like the Phase Spider Matriarch, she was basically dead. Instead of running, Ethel tried to go down swinging with a vicious mockery, but all that got her was KO'd by Astarion and finished off by Simon Belmont. Going through her lair after having defeated her beforehand is pretty cool, and we get the exact kind of hero moments Simon would want, but after rescuing Mayrina and having Lae'zel bring Connor back because I wanted to finish the quest, but didn't think Simon, being a Christian and a slayer of undead, could get behind resurrecting a man as a zombie with dark magic, I wanted to do one last thing before taking on the Goblin Camp leaders. I recently learned of a shortcut to the Underdark, where if you jump down the hole in the Phase Spider Cave, it drops you there, so that's what I did, as my vampire killer for Act 1, the Corrosive Flail, is something you buy from Daryl in the Myconid colony. Unfortunately, I did not know that you needed to cast Featherfall on yourself to survive the fall. Seeing that the fall would only deal 16 damage, I jumped down, my party for some reason loaded in mid-air, and after a long, dark loading screen, I had lost honor mode. Womp womp. That really sucks, especially because I have a Featherfall scroll that I then use to get down safely in dishonor mode. But oh well, I've failed honor mode before, and this definitely won't be my last time trying to beat it. After landing safely, I'd take out all 3 Minotaurs in a surprisingly easy fight. Just not used to being this powerful. I survive having Lae'zel as a friend, and meet the mysterious woman, and we fight the Boulette, who was also kinda easy even though he has 100 temporary hit points and negates any damage lower than 15 while he has those hit points due to his Diamond Scales feature, but Shadowheart was able to fear it early in the first, so we just beat the shit out of him for 2 rounds straight, namely thanks to Simon and Astarion for getting rid of his Diamond Scales. He barely escapes, but we'll get back with him later. For now, I head to the Myconid colony and get what I'm looking for from Dareth. With a magical flail, my vampire killer, and the Cossack ring for extra damage now in hand, I rescue the Owlbear cub from the goblins and then make my way inside, where I free Volo and Liam and then literally just start an all-out war with the goblins Castlevania style rather than trying to go the sneakier strategy route. I climb to the highest point in the room so that my thrown sub-weapons get good additional fall damage. I knocked down the overhanging chandelier for extra damage, but stupidly forgot to move my teammates out from right underneath it, hitting them too, and then I just proceed to destroy all the goblins. Even Shield couldn't protect Priestess Gut from the fall damage of my cross, though she did drop an entire statue on Astarion and Shadowheart, which is honestly kind of awesome. I've never seen that before, but even with the chandelier and the 2 statues, the goblins stood no chance. That's 1 leader down and another tadpole for me. I also stole all the Zent's explosives, so Merkel better watch out. I opened up the warp point to the Selene outpost in the Underdark, and I used a couple of my tadpoles to unlock some good powers, like Favorable Beginnings and Luck of the Far Realm. Next was Minthara, who I just sent down the chasm after killing all of her gobos. 1 tadpole ain't worth a long drawn out battle I can avoid while still getting the XP for. With how much damage Astarion, myself, and Lae'zel were doing with Sneak Attack and Action Surge respectively, the Dror Ragzlin fight was a joke of an encounter. He had about 20 health left by the time round 2 started, one of his allies had already been completely one-shot by Astarion, and after a second turn from Astarion, 20 health remaining dropped to a measly 4. With that little health left, Astarion was able to finish him off with a vampire bite, and the fight from there was just a series of 1 and 2 shots with no real danger of losing anyone. Now I kinda wanted to do the Shadow Druid Kaga fight since it's been a while since I've done it, and I'm certainly strong enough, but I didn't realize that if you defeat the 3 Goblin Camp leaders, Halsin can free himself without your help, so the best I could do was warn him that Kaga's in league with Shadow Druids, which never amounts to anything. Also, I let the Tieflings keep their money because I don't need it, and because I need the good reputation more than the gold. Before finishing up with the first section of Act 1, I went back to where Halsin was being held, and of course everyone was dead, but because of that, I was able to get my hands on the Linebreaker boots, a pair of magically enchanted fur and leather boots that look like Simon's own boots while still having a useful enchantment. The Tieflings and I celebrate our victory over the Gobos, and, with the Grove and Goblin Camp section done now, it was time now to forge into the Underdark, so I warped to the Myconid colony and enlisted Glut to help us defeat the nearby Duergar for Spa. We were able to take out their archer and heavily damaged Gek in the first round, but his other 2 allies were invisible so we couldn't see them, and because we weren't able to drop Gek before his turn, he summoned a bunch of zombies to help him. Glut was able to deck Gek and finish him off with an opportunity attack, and though the zombies are a little annoying because they can survive a one-shot, making Gek a spore zombie definitely helped our action economy. I was able to reveal Lurgon with Shadowheart's Spirit Guardian spell, and not only did he not survive for much longer after that, but Garmor, the Barbarian, revealed himself not long after and basically got jumped on sight. After all that, it was just a matter of beating the zombies until they stayed down. Glut wanted to betray and destroy the Spa colony, but I couldn't abide by that, so we had to destroy him. Also, something funny I love about this fight, Glut's own Spore Zombie always turns against him. Like, it'll become hostile to you if you leave and then come back later, but for the initial fight, it teams up with you against its master. After taking out Glut, I quickly kill all the nearby hook horrors and even that boulette from earlier that escaped to collect the Sisser Tree bark and all the Sisser Tree blooms so that I can clean out the Arcane Tower, and I get to 6th level in the process, where I take my 3rd and final level of Fighter for the Battlemaster subclass, which I took for the Trip Attack battle maneuver, which, in conjunction with a jump before or after the attack, will be our up B attack for this run, the Uppercut attack. After using the bark to make the Susur Greatsword, I used the Susur flowers to deactivate all the turrets in Arcane Tower and loot the place dry, including the mundane chest and the ingredients for the potion for the Omelum quest, which I completed. I also let Spawn know about both the Duergar and Glut, and got to loot their treasure room as a reward before hopping on Gek's boat and heading off to Grymforge. I pushed Greymon into the drink and took out the patrol party on the way over, did all the side content at Grymforge I could remember, like getting a rune powder vial from Philomena, Volo gave me a magic eye that can see invisible creatures, I killed the Maragon, and I took out the Mimics, but I also decided killing Grym was a tad out of the way, so I just headed to the Nere cave-in, and though I considered leaving him there to die, I don't think Simon would abandon the gnomes and allow for them to remain slaves, so I used the explosive charges to free Nere, and began the major boss fight of Act 1. For the first round, I pretty much just focused Nere, using my uppercut to get to him, and then action surging to lay into him with my vampire killer, and though he activated Psionic Visage and all of his Duergar minions attacked us, Lae'zel with extra attack and action surge was able to bring him down to 5 HP. Where he failed to do anything on his turn due to being silenced by Lae'zel's sword, and would die at the start of Shadowheart's next turn due to his starting the turn in her Spirit Guardian spell. The Duergar were by no means weak, especially with their numbers advantage, but with Nere, the biggest threat of them all, out of the way, though Lae'zel got downed a couple times, Shadowheart was able to keep us all alive, and we were able to finish off the forces of Grymforge and save the Iron Hand Deep Gnomes. I took up the quest of rescuing Wulbren from Moonrise, Barkus agreed to rest at our camp and travel with us briefly, and we went through the Risen Road, saved everyone at Joaquin's Rest, pacified and killed all the gnolls there, including Flind since we were more than strong enough at this point, got attacked by the Zent guys we'd just saved for some reason and had to kill them in self-defense, leveled up again to 7th level, where I grabbed a 4th level of Ranger where I just maxed out my strength with an ASI, I completed the delivery job for the Zentarim at Joaquin's Rest, freed Oscar, and then I was on to the Gith encounter at the Mountain Pass. Lae'zel was pretty insistent on playing nice with the Gith, so I convinced her to lie to Voss to keep the peace. I finished up any business I had left in this section of Act 1, like turning in Nere's head to Spa, and enlisting the entire Myconid colony to aid in the destruction of the Book of Thay, which I remembered at this point before continuing onward, and we made our way to the Rosemary Monastery. We had found the Gith of the nearby Creche that Lae'zel had been trying to get us to, but we still had to make it to the Creche itself for the supposed cure to the tadpoles they have. So after taking out a legion of drunk kobolds and getting the Dawn Master seal for later, we made it to the Creche. I used my famous Belmont monster hunter reputation to intimidate the Gith Yankee guards into letting me in, and after cleaning out Jira's inventory to get another vampire killer in the Defender Flail and to strengthen my party, I spoke with the Gustel of the Creche and allowed Lae'zel to use the Zaithisk for purification of the tadpole. Things started looking a little dicey when I noticed a Pepto-Bismol-looking fluid leaking out of Lae'zel's ears and realized it was her brain turning into goo. So I passed a DC 30 persuasion check after using like 4 inspiration, and convinced her to get out of the machine before it kills her, but the Gustel didn't like that, so she and her cronies try to finish us off. I used my Alchemist Flask, my down B holy water, to start the fight, and other than the fact that Astarion was so stealth that he evaded detection from even me and I forgot to use him for half of the fight, we were able to defeat the Gith pretty uneventfully, though it was fun to use a lot of AoE spells and abilities here, and it did push me to 8th level, where I grabbed a 5th level of Ranger and got enhanced ability and I think extra attack. To represent Simon's final smash, Grand Cross, I'm gonna have to take 9 levels of Cleric at some point since I've decided that the best way to represent Grand Cross is casting Guardian of Faith and Flame Strike since both do AoE radiant damage. I'm planning on either doing Cleric of Light for Lathander since he's the closest god to, well, God in D&D, but my brother-in-law recently pointed out to me that War Cleric would mechanically be the better choice, especially since, while I could theoretically use War Cleric's abilities since they just use Divine Magic to strengthen your attacks, I wouldn't be able to use any of Light Cleric's features because they're straight up magic, which Simon doesn't use. Let me know what you guys think I should do for that moving forward into Acts 2 and 3, or if you have a way to replicate Grand Cross without having to waste 9 levels on a class I'll barely use. I'd like to circumvent that if at all possible, but I'm not really seeing any other way to get Grand Cross, which is an AoE nuke of Holy Divine Power. The fight against the Resin was a pain in the butt because she feared 2 of my main damage dealers right from the offset, but with Shadowheart pulling her own weight and Lae'zel really clutching up, we were able to take out the Kithrak as well as her wolves and backup in a fairly tough fight all things considered. Next was the Inquisitor fight, and oh boy, When I tell you that this fight was actually easier than the captain fight just now, I mean it. I decided to start by focusing the Inquisitor since he has an ability that summons autonomous weapons to help him when he's hit, but they all disappear when he's killed. Astarion's sneak attack got rid of his ready to parry, and though Wargaz dodged a lot of Lae'zel's opening attacks, one crit dropped him to almost half health, and an action surge further dropped him to basically a third of his maximum HP. Simon then finished him off with his vampire killer, and all that was left was his backup, which were honestly fairly tough altogether. Lae'zel and Astarion were able to take one out instantly together, but one almost dropped Simon, so Simon and Shadowheart took out one of the Ardents. Astarion was able to drop the last Ardent, and Simon defeated the final Gith warrior with his uppercut. The false god Vlaakith commanded that we kill the mysterious woman in the prism, but we instead bolster our alignment with her and escape the Creche's forces through the secret Lathander tunnel, where I'm able to get the blood of Lathander and warp back to the Mountain Pass entrance. Finally, on my way to the passage that will lead me to Act 2, I had to fight some undead, which I'm happy to do as that's my element as a Belmont. Despite the Death Shepherds being annoying and reviving any undead I destroyed, forcing me to focus them first, the encounter was uncharacteristically easy, and with them defeated, the path to the Shadow-Cursed lands was open, the place where Simon Belmont would be best suited for combat. With his anti-undead armor equipped, with his axe, cross, uppercut attack, his holy water, both the alchemist flask approximation and the literal holy water he has, and his vampire killer in hand, Simon Belmont was ready to set off into the eternal night of the darkness-stricken lands between him and Baldur's Gate to defeat the evil forces of the false god the Absolute and save the Sword Coast, as well as the whole of Faerun, maybe even all of Toril. Let me know how you guys think Act 2 is gonna go. Being that I'm already the same level I'd normally be fighting Merkel, I've got high hopes, but what do you guys think? Also, let me know what you guys think about doing these videos in acts, about whether or not I should add Richter to the team, and what I should do about Grand Cross, or what cleric domain to take. Let me know if you all like the changes I've made, or how you'd change things yourself if not. In the meantime, maybe go check out my most recent D&D homebrew build. It comes with a free PDF for a Witch Hunter class based on the prayer from the game Witchfire. It's awesome. Anyway, see you guys later. Peace.